All right. Gaza is under siege as Israel forces mass on the border.
Its mass mobilization of troops, hundreds of thousands, on the southern border with Gaza. The widespread expectation that a ground offensive across the frontier may be coming. But the UN is calling for essential supplies to be allowed into the territory where the humanitarian situation is deteriorating rapidly as Israel enforces a complete siege. The very latest from right across the region with our international editor Jeremy Bowen in the southern town of Be'eri.
The Israelis have made a lot of progress in getting their troops prepared for that moment if and when, and probably when, the order comes to invade Gaza. Israel's allies are gathering. Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, is flying in overnight from Washington. American support includes weapons and moving an aircraft carrier battle group closer to deter Iran's allies in Lebanon from joining the war.
The United States.
The thing that is stopping Lebanon or Hezbollah from joining the Northern Front and opening up a two-front battle for Israel is the same reason why Israel does not feel comfortable. Well, one of the reasons why Israel does not feel comfortable in doing a land invasion of Gaza. Obviously, the first and foremost primary reason as to why Israel does not want to invade Gaza by land is because it is incredibly costly from a human point of view. It's much easier to just bomb from afar. What I mean by that is you can bomb from afar, and none of the people that are lobbing missiles or dropping bombs from airplanes to get a scratch on them. But if you actually go in to the Gaza Strip, all of a sudden you have a complicated network of tunnels and people that understand the terrain much better than you that are going to literally kill a bunch of Israeli soldiers. So that's why they want to avoid casualties on the IDF side. And part of that is of course, causing the many casualties on the Palestinian side. So that's number one. Number two, and perhaps more importantly, Israel, despite having a massive military, does not have enough money to keep up 300,000 reservists and keep them paid, keep them fed, keep them ready to fight in fighting position. It's simply not something that Israel is capable of doing, no matter how much money they get from their allies. Yes, I am sure of it. Yes, 100%. It's not just my assessment. It is the assessment of Moody's, as far as I understand it. I saw the fucking article where it was like Moody's warned Israel that their credit score might be... Moody's sends Israel rating warning that insurance costs spike. Moody's sent a warning to Israel on Wednesday, days before a scheduled rating review, that a prolonged war with Hamas could drag down the country's credit score. Surprise attacks by Hamas at the end of the weekend have sparked worst escalation of violence in 50 years and raised questions about not just the humanitarian cost, but the economic toll as well. Moody's, which scheduled to review Israel's A1 stable rating on Friday, said the chance of a downgrade would depend on how the war develops. In the past, Israel's sovereign credit profile has shown resilience to terrorist attacks and military action, a group of the firm's top analysts said in a note. However, a prolonged conflict that durably and significantly impairs economic activity and policymaking would test that resilience. Comments came as traders pushed the cost of insuring Israel's debt against a default to the highest level in nearly a decade. Credit default swaps, as the insurance policies are known, broke through 100 basis point level, meaning they've surged more than 65% since the weekend's attacks. Israel has never been downgraded by any of the three main agencies, S&P Global, Moody's, and Fitch, but analysts highlight that this week's surge in CDS shows traders have concerns that it could now be downgraded. So that's another aspect of the problem. And last but not least, I guess that those are the two main points to consider. But there's also the reality that there could be a multiple front war, which again would be devastating. Be devastating for Israel and its military. So those are factors that are always important to consider. But the very same factors for Lebanon or Hezbollah in general also exist. The economic circumstances of Lebanon is significantly worse than Israel. Okay? It is in a state of dire disrepair, and therefore Hezbollah forces opening up a second front against Israel in northern Israel would be completely and unimaginably awful for the Lebanese economy. And last but not least, it seems like nobody wants to bring Iran into the fold. You have the aircraft carriers that are trucking in the direction of Israel, and part of that is to ensure that there are necessary resources and military support for Israel if Iran, Syria, and Hezbollah join in a war against Israel. Now, while tensions are this high, conflict must be avoided at all costs. The goal should be to prevent unnecessary bloodshed. That is my goal always. It looked like Lebanon, Syria, and Iran were going to get involved. The U.S. wouldn't do a direct intervention. If it looked like Lebanon, Syria, and Iran were going to get involved, the U.S. wouldn't do a direct intervention. Really? I really, really, really hope that Anthony Blinken, don't know if this is even possible, but I really hope that they can get the Israeli ground operations to not do what they're trying to do. We'll see. Anthony Blinken wrote and deleted twice tweets that urged Israel to de-escalate, which is so odd. So I don't know. BBC team reporting from Gaza finds dozens of neighbors and friends among the injured.
Hasan Piker, a reporter for BBC Arabic and a resident of Gaza. Here in Al-Shifa hospital, bodies lay everywhere. The injured scream for help. You can never forget these sounds. Among the dead and wounded, my cameraman Mahmoud has seen his friend Malik. Malik has managed to survive, but his family have not.
I don't know. The BBC cameraman found his friends. I don't know if there's TOS in this.
This is my local hospital. Inside are my friends, my neighbors. This is my community. Today has been one of the most difficult days in my career. I have seen things I can't never unsee. This young girl's home was destroyed. Her relatives have been killed and she needs help.
Oh,
My daughter is the same age. I want to give her a hug.
They censor it.
In the chaos, we try to understand what is going on. A mother called Muhammad sits next the bodies of her family.
We were sleeping and they bombarded our house like everyone else. We don't have any resistance fighters in our building. All the building is full of residents. 120 people live there.
The corridors of Al-Shifa hospital are filled with bodies. The morgue can no longer cope. The bodies of the dead have to be laid on the floor outside the hospital entrance. You never want to become the story, yet in my city, I feel helpless as the dead were given no dignity and the injured are left in pain. Adnan Al-Bursh, BBC News, Gaza.
I've never seen this reporter before, and I think it's partially because like they're just cycling through so many of them because a bunch of them are dying and a bunch of them can't get into Gaza. But here's Anthony Blinken.
Has Israel's back. We have the back of the Israeli people. We have their back today. We'll have it tomorrow. We will have it every day.
James Cleverly, Britain's Foreign Secretary, was already here in Israel at a frontline town near Gaza.
I'm not going to speculate on what support we might want to give. I'm here to find out. I'm here to find out what practical support we can give to Israel.
The Foreign Secretary was hustled into a shelter when the sirens went. Israel has the four-square support of its allies after the massacres perpetrated by Hamas. In their safe rooms, millions of Israelis are praying, waiting, often frightened now that assumptions they had about their safety have crumbled. Their government says what it's doing in Gaza is defending them. But only a few miles from this family in Ashkelon, Israel's onslaught raises questions about whether it's breaking the laws of war. In Gaza, Israel has caused immense damage in only 5 days. International humanitarian law obliges belligerents to protect civilian lives. Israel says all this is legitimate self-defense against Hamas. But it's also cut off supplies of water, food, fuel, and power to more than 2 million people and killed hundreds of civilians. Outside the main hospital in Gaza City, Ala Al-Kafane sits with the bodies of his entire close family. They'd moved twice to escape the airstrikes until one hit their borrowed apartment at 4 this morning.
I've lost my father, my brother, my uncle, 2 cousins, 2 other family members, and my pregnant wife. I'm the only survivor.
He said, "We've done nothing." Israel insists Hamas is to blame for the suffering of Palestinians. But accusations that Israel is answering the war crimes of Hamas with ones of its own have started.
Yeah, just simply accusations. Bro, how are you going to say it's accusations when you're showing it? Like, what do you mean? Dude, this kind of coverage is so crazy. I don't know what to say.
Back in Israel, videos are still emerging from the Hamas attack last Saturday. Security cameras showed 2 women trying to escape a Hamas gunman. Somehow he misses them. Armed Israelis arrive, and the man who wanted to murder them either retreats or is killed.
Wait, what?
And at a hospital near Tel Aviv, signs of the tension in Israel. A visiting government minister gets a furious reception. A nurse yells they've been helped by every kind of civilian, but the government has given them nothing. The military buildup might steady Israeli nerves, and the defense minister said tonight, "We will wipe Hamas off the face of the earth." Jeremy Bowen, BBC News, in southern Israel.
Oh, Jesus Christ. That's not what happened. They let the woman run back to her car after IDF forces started fire on the border. I don't know why they're lying. What? I don't know. I don't know what that is.
Well, Palestinian media say the only power plant still operating in the Gaza Strip has now stopped working after running out of fuel. And as we've been hearing, there are more than 200 targets that have been hit by the Israelis in airstrikes overnight. And these images show the level of destruction. This is the Rimal area before the strikes, and this, a satellite image of the same neighborhood, which came through yesterday and has been
Jesus
located.
Fucking Christ. Yo, for those of you who are asking, like, how's there only a couple thousand, or how's there only 1,000 dead? The reason why there's only 1,000 dead, which is ridiculous to say, I can't believe it, but it's 1,000 now, and it's probably going to be higher. And also, there are hundreds of thousands that are displaced. Hundreds of thousands that are displaced right now because they ran away from their homes, knowing full well that it was going to be bombed into oblivion. So they are at different shelters, not bomb shelters specifically. But incorrect. Oh, the latest numbers are 1,537 Palestinians killed and more than 6,000 wounded. What's going on with the hostages? They're literally going to kill the hostages too with the bombing? Yes. The displaced right now that are sitting in like UN facilities all around Gaza, the numbers are it was at 200,000 yesterday, so I don't know where it's at now, but no reason to believe that number has diminished, obviously. It's probably increased dramatically, as a matter of fact. There it is. 270,000 Palestinians are being sheltered in UN-run shelters right now. That means at least 270,000 that have been displaced. UN workers have died. UN facilities also receive shelling as well. And now the Human Rights Watch has officially confirmed white phosphorus being used in Gaza and in Lebanon. I did not want to go along with this narrative until there was at least some level of confirmation, and that confirmation has come. Israel's use of white phosphorus in military operations in Gaza and Lebanon puts civilians at risk of serious and long-term injuries. Human Rights Watch said today in releasing a question and answer document on white phosphorus that they verified videos taken in Lebanon and Gaza October 10th, 11th, 2023, respectively, showing multiple airbursts of artillery-fired white phosphorus over the Gaza City port and 2 rural locations along the Israel-Lebanon border, and interviewed 2 people who described an attack in Gaza. White phosphorus, which can be used either for marking, signaling, and obscuring, or as a weapon to set fires that burn people and objects, has a significant incendiary effect that can severely burn people and set structures, fields, and other civilian objects in the vicinity on fire. The use of white phosphorus in Gaza, one of the most densely populated areas in the world, magnifies the risk to civilians and violates the international humanitarian law prohibition on putting civilians at unnecessary risk. There's no reason to use white phosphorus considering the heavy bombing campaign, because they don't need to use white phosphorus. Anytime the white phosphorus is used in crowded civilian areas, it poses a high risk of excruciating burns and lifelong suffering. Like, they can blow up buildings without it. They've killed so many without it. Just cruel and unusual. Like, the difference between maiming someone and like killing them. Yes. So they reviewed 2 videos from October 10th and 2 locations near the Israel-Lebanon border. Each shows 155 millimeter white phosphorus artillery projectiles being used. White phosphorus ignites when exposed to atmospheric oxygen and continues to burn. Yeah, I mean, I wonder if they found a different footage that we hadn't seen, because the footage that you guys kept sending me, some of it was from, I think, Syria, and I believe that they had used white phosphorus in the past. In 2013, in response to a petition to Israel's High Court of Justice regarding the use of white phosphorus in Gaza, the Israeli military stated that it would no longer use white phosphorus in populated areas, except in 2 narrow situations that it revealed only to the justices. In the court's ruling, Justice Edna Arbel said that the conditions would render use of white phosphorus an extreme exception in highly particular circumstances. That's crazy. I wonder what those circumstances were. Although this ruling did not represent an official change in policy, Justice Arbel called on the Israeli military to conduct a thorough and comprehensive examination and adopt a permanent military directive. Attacks using air-delivered incendiary weapons in civilian areas are prohibited under Protocol 3. Protocol 3 applies only to weapons that are primarily designed to set fires or cause burns, and thus some countries believe it excludes certain multi-purpose munitions with incendiary effects, notably those containing white phosphorus. White phosphorus is like, using a flamethrower from a plane. It's cruel and unusual and unnecessary punishment.
By our colleagues at BBC Verify, more than 1,000 people are now known to have died, and 250,000 have been forced from their homes. Well, Gaza is of course under siege and communications are extremely difficult. But we can talk now to our correspondent Rushdie Abu Alouf, who's live in Gaza City for us tonight. Rushdie, just tell us what the last few days have been like, living in an area under siege and under constant bombardment from the air.
Yeah, I can say I have been witnessing the heaviest airstrike in my 20 years covering of this story. It was by far the heaviest. I've been witnessing what the destruction in this Rimal neighborhood. For a very long time, this neighborhood has been the safe haven for most of the Gaza, and most of the streets in this neighborhood was destroyed. I was among the families who were suffering during the days. But the humanitarian side of the story is moving in a very significant way. When like 2 million people lost the electricity today, we are talking about the essential services such as medical services, water supplies, food supplies are being suspended because of that. The humanitarian corridor for letting food and medicine and fuel into Gaza is a must, is a call from every Palestinian. That's why we understand tonight from a senior Egyptian official that Egypt is working closely with other countries and contacting Hamas and Israel to try to find a draft of 6 hours to allow goods and fuel to come from Egypt into Gaza.
All right, so the UN says it's been forced to shut down 14 food distribution centers in Gaza. Yes, I think Israel also bombed the airport in Damascus as well. Here are the numbers the Israeli Air Force is saying they bombed. Dozens of fighter jets and helicopters attacked a series of terrorist targets of the Hamas terrorist organization throughout the Gaza Strip so far. The Israeli Air Force has dropped about 6,000 bombs against Hamas targets.
And what about those Palestinians in hospital who are on life support, and babies and incubators whose life support and incubator will have to...
By the way, this is legitimately the same line of questioning that should be asked all the time. Okay? This is a good line of questioning to follow anytime an Israeli official that is directly related to the atrocities, they should be called in the question, especially because the people that you bring up from the Palestinian side do not have any fucking power, okay? They don't. The people in Gaza, you're not talking to Hamas. You're not talking to Hamas officials. You're talking to fucking random people living in Gaza or random Americans living in Gaza. Whereas when you have this conversation with someone like fucking Naftali Bennett, like you're talking to a dude who got the hands on the trigger pretty much, or at least like is more complicit than the average person. You know what I mean? Certainly, if you ask a random Israeli that comes on, you know what I mean, like an Israeli citizen that is powerless, if they came on and you were like, what do you think about the violence in Gaza? Like, do you condemn the violence of your government? Like, that would be ridiculous. Obviously, no such consideration exists for every single fucking Palestinian that has ever been on any of these broadcasts. But yes, you absolutely should do this when you have officials in positions of power. You absolutely should fucking ask that question. So I'm glad that that question is being asked, especially because when that question is asked, here's the answer.
And what about those Palestinians in hospital who are on life support and babies and incubators whose life support and incubator will have to be turned off because the Israelis have cut the power to Gaza?
Are you seriously keep on asking me about Palestinian civilians? What's wrong with you? Have you not seen what happened? We're fighting Nazis. We don't target them. Now, the world can come and bring them anything they want.
Wait, well, I don't get it. If you're fighting Nazis, why do you not kill them indiscriminately then if they're Nazis? Right? I mean, there's no consideration at that point. No civilian casualties, right? I don't get it.
If you want to bring them electricity, I'm not going to feed electricity or water to my enemies. If anyone else wants, that's fine. We're not responsible for them.
This is the point.
But you
this
keep
is the
on.
point.
I want to tell you. No. Listen. You listen to me right now. I've heard you enough.
No, I understand. We're trying to have a conversation here. Listen, this is my program. This is my show. And I am asking the questions. You're raising your voice, and I've asked you, and we've all...
The reason why he's reacting this way is because it is so completely outside of the bounds of expectation. He's like, what? How dare you? Like, what are you, fucking crazy? You fucking asking me that shit? Fuck you.
No, I understand. We're trying to have a conversation here. Listen, this is my program. This is my show. And I am asking the questions. You're raising your voice, and I've asked you, and we've already stopped, please, and let me finish. We've already distinguished between Hamas.
I want to tell you, shame on you.
You're trying to speak over.
We are not. Shame on you.
It's nothing about shame. We're trying to have a conversation about a very serious situation here, and you are refusing to address it.
Jump over immediately. And again, you
absolutely not. You are incorrect.
They are responsible, because I can tell you that when the UK, when Great Britain was fighting the Nazis during World War II, no one asked what's going on in Dresden. It was the
Bro, I'm gonna run that back. While also simultaneously, yes, he is the moderate one. He's the moderate guy. That's Naftali Bennett. I want you to understand something. Just when he is talking about Dresden. Okay, bombing of Dresden. We are currently talking about a population. He's supposed to be the moderate guy. We are talking about a population that is 47% 14 and under.
Responsible, because I can tell you that when the UK,
absolutely
when Great Britain was fighting the Nazis during World War II, no one asked what's going on in Dresden. It was the Nazis targeting London, and you targeted Dresden. So
listen,
shame on you if you go on with that false narrative.
We're not talking about that, and in hindsight, many people have listened.
Oh no, he's going to be like, yeah, maybe that wasn't the best example to bring up, because like, you know, like was that a good move? Like, because World War II is fucking great. Okay, it was horrific, it was awful, but as far as like moral superiority and moral clarity goes, there is like a ton of examples that you can use that is objectively correct, right? Like there's a ton of examples that you can point to be like, here is where the criminal punishments or the deaths that the Nazis were dealt were so valid. Dresden quite literally is the one of the very few. It's where it gets tricky, okay, from a historical perspective. Same with like the firebombing in Japan. Many such examples of good conquest that you could point to, and he went to choose the fucking one that is like contested. Be careful, you're playing with fire. Am I playing with fire? I don't think I'm saying anything wrong. I mean, Howard Zinn has openly talked about how radicalizing it was for him, specifically as an Air Force bomber pilot during World War II, where they engaged in bombing campaigns over Germany that literally that he felt. Batter said at least he didn't say Nagasaki. Yeah, literally. On like controversies, I would say, yeah, Dresden over here in the UK is even seen as a mistake by a lot of British people. We don't have to defend all of America's actions in World War II in order to accuse you of war crimes. Yeah, Kurt Vonnegut as well. Like a lot of people were very legitimately conflicted on the actions that the military took. And guess, you know what wasn't conflicting though? Like pretty much every fucking ground battle. You know what I mean? Like there's a difference. Now, that was Nazi Germany. Okay? That was Nazi fucking Germany. To make such a comparison to like Palestinian children's inside of Gaza, the most densely packed open air prison. I mean, it's like at a certain point, I just wouldn't make World War II references at that point, because it's like, what do you mean? You have ghettoized the West Bank, and Gaza is like functionally not a concentration camp, obviously, because there isn't internal security in there that is like Israeli. It is a ghetto though. It is a ghetto. It is still a ghetto. It is a prison, the open air prison.
And in hindsight, many people have readdressed that kind of carpet bombing.
Oh, I see. Now you're Mr. Clean.
And in hindsight, many people have readdressed that kind of carpet.
He literally very quickly turns it on the Sky News anchor to say, oh, it's from your perspective, it's okay to decapitate babies. Bro, absolutely zero people have said that. That is such a wild way to defend this. Like, what the fuck are you saying? Most normal human beings are going to look at you and go, you are so crazy for saying that. Now, there's plenty of people who are. There's plenty of people who are like fully subscribed to the propaganda, and maybe they just don't recognize it, but that's wild, man.
Bombing.
Babies. Oh, I see. Now you're Mr. Clean. Shame on you.
Absolutely not. And I'm not. Listen, Mr. Bennett, I am not in the military. I am a journalist asking you questions. Are you going to let me ask you a question, or you continue shouting at me? We've already distinguished between Hamas and the Palestinians. I'm asking you very directly. What do you want to ask? Is going to be done to make sure that those innocent people don't get killed, as innocent Jewish people were killed on Saturday?
What did he respond to? I want to know. Yesterday, Gideon Levi explained that, yes, the rhetoric of Israeli fascist politicians is far more extreme than the rhetoric of moderates, but it was the so-called moderates who established the occupation, settlement project, and apartheid. I mean, this part is also correct.
And what about those Palestinian?
That's why you have to make a distinction between the government and the people. And even when we talk about it, like...
It was the Nazis targeting London and you...
And in hindsight, many people have... Listen, and in hindsight, many people have readdressed that kind of carpet bombing.
Babies. Oh, I see. Now you're Mr. Clean. Shame on you.
Absolutely not. And I'm not. Listen, Mr. Bennett, I am not in the military. I am a journalist asking you questions. Are you going to let me ask you a question, or you continue shouting at me? We've already distinguished between Hamas and the Palestinians. I'm asking you very directly. What do you want to ask? Is going to be done to make sure that those innocent people don't get killed, as innocent Jewish people were killed on Saturday?
Well, we're going to target Hamas, and we're telling Hamas that if you use anyone as your human shield, and you're going to shoot at us using human shields, that it's their responsibility. Listen, mister, if someone is shooting at your children and hiding behind a human shield, will you shoot back or not? I'm asking you a question. Someone's shooting at your children, but hiding behind civilians. What's the answer? What would you do?
Mr. Bennett, I'm not here to answer your questions. I've asked you.
What an insane thing. First of all, you don't shoot. Like, what? Like, does he think this is a movie or something? Like, you're not. There are rules of engagement in circumstances like that. And I'm fucking pretty sure that you're not supposed to shoot. And not only that, but there's an effective means, even militarily, of like fighting back against Hamas. And they don't want to fucking do it because they've tried it before and it was infinitely more costly for the IDF. So that's the real reason why they're engaging in the fucking bombing campaign, because they don't want to put their soldiers' lives on the line. It's much easier to like just straight up lob missiles from afar and sit back and wait out the anger to subside. But yeah, as far as like shooting someone who is a hostage, like, brother, some of those hostages are your children, you know? There are hundreds of Israeli and other foreign nationals that are currently trapped inside of Gaza as kidnapped as hostages. Because the people thought that this would be the Hamas militants thought that this would be a viable way to ensure that Israel wouldn't engage in a bombing campaign, and they were wrong. They said those guys are as good as dead, which I originally thought was going to cause chaos internally for them, and I think it will, but it doesn't seem to have worked in tempering their reaction. And like, yeah, the carpet bombing concept is also not equivalent to a fucking hostage situation anyway. So none of this makes sense, especially because there are more effective methods that Israel could utilize, but they don't want to. They don't want to because they don't want IDF soldiers to die.
To your questions, and you have not answered them directly. All right, we'll stop. We'll leave it there.
Also, the guy said electricity to hospitals. Electricity to hospitals have nothing to do with anything. Like, even if you kept bombing, even if you kept carpet bombing Gaza, he's like, so what do you think about cutting electricity off from hospitals? Like, it's very telling that is how much of the Hamas human shield thing is legit versus an excuse for casualties among innocents. It's entirely a propaganda talking point. It is completely ridiculous. No, I do not believe that it's a Hamas hospital. As far as like, is it operated by Hamas? Yes, because Hamas is the fucking government. But does that mean there's militants there? No. I don't believe when they blow up hospitals to just and try to justify their war crimes, they're just saying it's Hamas. It's an excuse. And it's an excuse that doesn't work that well. That's why they used to say these are telegenically dead children, or I was reminded on Twitter of an old concept I remember covering many years past, before the advent of before the mass usage of telephones with phone cameras. There was a concept within the Israeli government amongst like some of the more radical people called Pallywood, okay? Like Hollywood, but Palestine, where they would say Palestinians are staging deaths to film it. Now, of course, with the advent of the camera phone and with the mass usage of the camera phone, you don't really hear about Pallywood as much. They still say things like that, though, when they say stuff like telegenically dead children.